Hello people! Welcome back to Story, Crime, and Wine. Today is a bunch of random stories that I was able to find. No true category, a little bit of everything actually. So, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe, hit the like button, and the bell because you never know when a post will strike when you need it most. Grab a glass of wine or water or whatever you need, and let's get started. I had a neighbor a few years ago who was your classic friendly neighbor. He'd sometimes bring pies he made over, offer to help shovel the driveway when the snow got bad, and he even babysat me as I was growing up, since I lived in my parents' home and we were right next door. One thing, however, always struck me weird about him, and that was the fact that he would always tell me, it's okay to be afraid. No context and completely out of the blue. I always saw it as weird, but kind of just shrugged it off like some sort of weird advice. Another strange memory that comes up is when I went into his house one time for a Halloween party, and he didn't have a costume on, just a t-shirt and jeans. I asked why he wasn't, and he said, "What do you mean? I'm dressed up as hiding in plain sight." And he started laughing. At the time, I thought it was kind of funny, a little dry, but funny. Before I walked away, he winked and said, "It's okay to be afraid," and disappeared into the kitchen. Again, kind of weird and out of context, but nothing too concerning. The party went on and eventually came to an end like normal. My parents and I were getting ready to head back home when our neighbor comes up to me and says, "Are you afraid of me?" I was kind of shocked at first because, well, who asks that? I responded, "Of course not," and he says, yet with a big toothy grin, "It's okay to be afraid, you know. Sometimes it's a good thing." I smiled, said thanks for the party, and booked it the hell out of there. A few days later, my parents told me our neighbor needed someone to house sit for him because he was leaving for a road trip. Seeing as I was 16 and unemployed at the time, they figured it was going to be some good side money for me. They volunteered me and told me I start the next morning. I was grateful for the money, but in all honesty, something felt off. Ever since the party, I was kind of put off by the guy and his house. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid and that I could use the money. The next morning, I headed over to the house, but I couldn't open the door. Not because it was stuck or the key was wrong, but my gut just kept telling me not to open it. I felt like someone or something was behind that door, and I didn't want to meet them. I walked back home, but I noticed something strange in the woods behind our neighbor's house. His car was there. It was clearly trying to be hidden, but wasn't done very well. Considering he was supposed to be on a road trip, his car would be a pretty key item in that aspect. So, he was either with someone else or he was home. I told my parents the situation, and they said that it was strange, but not to worry about it. If I wasn't comfortable though, they said that they would go over instead. I thanked them and said that I would go over as long as I wasn't alone. I felt safe because, well, my father is a big man, about 6'4" or 6'5", and hits the gym daily, and I couldn't be more grateful. When we entered the house, everything seemed normal, but when we headed upstairs, we heard the front door close and lock. My father motioned me and my mom behind him, and then the neighbor came upstairs, but he looked like he had seen a ghost. He looked at us and said, "Oh, I thought only your son was taking care of the house." My father, I could tell, was filled with rage, and he began screaming at the neighbor, asking why he lied and wanted me to go over alone, to which he didn't respond. My father then tackled him to the ground and rolled him on his stomach like an officer would to a suspect. Our neighbor put up no resistance, and a box cutter fell out of his pocket. He remained silent for a while, and my mom called the cops. Suddenly he looked directly at me, opened his mouth, and said, "I knew you were here, but you left. Were you afraid?" I didn't respond, and my father told him to shut up until the police arrived, which he did. The police handcuffed him, and all he said before he left was, "Hey kid, see why it's okay to be afraid?" And he let out this sinister laugh, one of those choking on your own spit kind of laughs. This shook me to my core, and I couldn't stop shaking in fear on the walk home with my parents. I found out after his trial and my testimony that he was also found responsible for the disappearances of several different people all around my age. He wouldn't admit where he took their lives, but they were clearly all people he had known. I'm not sure why he kept telling me it's okay to be afraid, or why he dressed as in plain sight for Halloween if he was trying not to get caught. Those were the only things that kept me alive. I know what would have happened if I walked in that house, and I know now that being afraid just might save your life. This was quite long ago. I was about 14 at the time, and it was midsummer. Me and my family decided it would be a good idea to do a vacation at the beach. We got our own little house near the beach, and not far behind us, fields and woods. It looked too good to be true. We obviously had a problem with mosquitoes and insects flying into our home whilst trying to let some fresh air in every now and again, but other than that, nothing seemed off. I remember one lovely Monday morning that I got up out of bed and headed straight to my mom to ask her if I could go take a walk in the woods. At first, she didn't really agree to it, but eventually she did. I was studying plants for research at the time and had a pen, notebook, and phone always on me. My mom obviously set a time to when I should be home. I went to the said woods. Looking up at the trees made me realize how small I actually was compared to everything else. Once I really got into my surroundings, I began drifting off, not paying any attention to where I was going nor what time it might be. This obviously was a horrid mistake. I soon realized that I had 20 missed calls on my phone and no path beneath my feet. I tried calling back, but to no avail. I tried desperately to find a way back onto the path, but failed. I remember running and having to stop every now and again to catch my breath. I constantly looked at the time on my phone and noticed that days were passing the further I continued to walk. My feet began feeling heavy, and it felt like the earth was sucking me down. I collapsed on the spot due to being overwhelmingly tired. It felt like a few seconds when I was out. I remember waking up in my bed at our home, no longer at vacation. I was very much confused. I got up and searched for my parents. They were downstairs eating breakfast. It was Friday and I was gonna lose it. I literally asked them multiple times what happened, but it just didn't make sense. All they said was, "We never had vacation and you never went outside." But that still won't explain the notes I have in my notebook and the missed calls still on my phone. I live in a rural town just south of Boston, and there's a very small diner right nearby my house that I've been going to ever since I can remember. It's called simply Jimmy's, and they stay open until about 1 in the morning. Me and my buddies always go there for some wings after a long night of drinking, and have been for a long time. The owner, who's nicknamed Jukebox Jimmy, always gives us a free first set of wings as long as we offer to pay 25 cents to play a song on his jukebox, to which we always happily oblige. However, the other night, I played a new Slipknot song for my buddy while we were eating our wings from Spotify on my phone. It wasn't too loud at all because nobody wants to be that guy at a restaurant. After it was over, we asked Jimmy for our classic set of wings, to which he grunted and went into the kitchen. My friend and I looked at each other and assumed Jimmy must have been having a rough day, so we went up to the jukebox to play our 25-cent song. As we put the quarter in the machine, Jimmy yelled from across the room, "Of course, now that your little device is done playing that music, you want to play real music." I had to take a minute to recognize what he had just said to me. I said back, "Excuse me? I was showing my friend a song." Jimmy looked almost insulted and gritted his teeth. He threw our wings on the ground and yelled, "Get the hell out of my diner! That jukebox is all I have left, and you guys just throw it to the side and prefer to use your little mobile audio players. I'm sick of it." Of course, at this point, me and my friend are hauling booty out of there, but we just didn't understand why an old man cared so much about his jukebox. So we decided that we just wouldn't go back, and that should have been it. Yet, it wasn't even close to over. That night, we got in my car, smoked a bowl together, and decided to head home. As I was driving my friend back home, this old Lincoln with its bumper hanging half off the front started following us. Soon after, we heard what felt like little pellets being thrown at my car. So we pulled over to the side of the road and the Lincoln just zoomed past us. At this point, I'm thinking there was rocks in the road or something like that. But we noticed in the middle of the road, there was quarters everywhere. The guy in the Lincoln was throwing quarters at us, and we knew it must have been Jimmy. At this point, me and my buddy are getting a little scared. This dude is harassing us, but we kind of just left it and headed home, seeing Jimmy as just another crazy old man. That night, after I dropped my friend off, I headed home and got into bed. The second I turned my lamp off, I heard something hit my window. I looked onto my roof, and there was yet another quarter. I looked outside and saw the Lincoln in my driveway, lights on and still running. I closed my blinds and called the police, but after I got off the phone, I saw that the car was gone and heard the faint sound of a song playing, and I realized it was in my garage. I walked into my garage and saw a mini portable jukebox, and it was playing Frank Sinatra's My Way. The window in my garage was also broken, which I didn't hear because my bedroom is fairly far away from my garage. The police said they will make sure to look out for the Lincoln, and took my information and such. At that point, they hadn't been able to get any more evidence to convict Jimmy because I didn't see it was actually him, despite me knowing it has to be. Still, every morning after that, I would wake up to new quarters on my roof, or little jukebox coupons in my yard. Eventually, I set up a trail camera to catch Jimmy in the act, to which I did, and the footage was creepy. It was Jimmy standing there with this big toothy grin on his face, and he had the lyrics to "In the Air Tonight" in his hand, and kept putting it up to the camera. Then he turned it around and had scribbled, "Jukebox Jimmy can't be caught." Then he smashed my camera and the footage cut out. So, of course, I sent it to the police and they said they would look for him right away. The next day, there was allegedly a fire in the diner and everything was effectively lost. Everything except the jukebox. After the fire, I woke up to grab my morning mail, assuming Jimmy had probably either fled to a different state or gotten caught and I'd hear about it soon. I reached into my mailbox and cut my hand pretty damn bad. Inside, there was a blade and a note that said, "Welcome to my way." Under the note was 2 pictures of the diner burning and Jimmy with a big smile inside of my tool shed. At that point, I called the police and then my friend, and he offered to let me stay at his place. This happened to me back when I was in 8th grade. I was annoyed at my mom, so when we were going to the grocery store, I just stayed in the car. My mom left the windows cracked open so I could get some fresh air because it was summer. The parking lot was very empty and the sun was setting. I started reading the book I brought when suddenly I heard some whistling. The whistling was a very haunting tune. I looked around for the source. I noticed a strange man standing at the end of the parking lot staring at me. He was the one whistling. I tried to ignore it, but it creeped me out. The whistling started getting louder. To my horror, the man was walking toward me, still whistling. I now had a better look at him. He was very tall and wore ragged clothing. He had a long beard and long hair and was probably homeless. I made sure the doors were locked and continued reading, hoping he would leave. Sure enough, the next time I looked up, he was gone. I sighed in relief. Before I could begin reading again, I heard that same whistling, this time right outside my window. I looked up and almost screamed. He was right outside the window staring at me. I worked up the courage and spoke, "What do you want?" trying to sound tough. He suddenly quickly put his hand on the window and moved closer, mouthing out the word, "You." I screamed and pushed myself into the back seat. I could hear him whistling as he walked around the car, knocking on each window as he went. I prayed that he would leave. Suddenly, the whistling stopped. Then soon after, I heard a door opening. My heart stopped. Did he get in? Luckily, it was my mom. I told her what happened. She quickly called the cops. I don't know if the man was ever caught, but it still scares me to this day.